Hey guys, Canadian Range Nut here. It is Tuesday, June the 21st, 2022, and lots to talk about. Every time I go to record, I usually record this the night before, there just seems to be new info coming out all the time. So first things I'm going to talk about today, I want to talk about the shootings that happened in Toronto over the weekend. A lot of information came out about that. Then I'm going to talk about a lot of crazy stuff happening in Toronto. There was a woman lit on fire last week too. Crazy story there. Shooting that happened in Hamilton. There's a lot of crazy stuff that happened over the weekend in Washington, D.C. with regards to the Juneteenth holiday. I'm going to go through a interview with conservatives, Rachel Danco, and a couple of the other conservatives there talking about the gun control bill. We're also going to look at a part of the reading for Bill C-21 in Parliament, talking about the impact that the bill will have on the airsoft industry. Then I want to get a bit into the self-defense debate. Couple of clips from Rogan and a guy named Colion Noir. He's a big Second Amendment advocate in the United States. And even they are taking notice of what Trudeau's doing down here. And then I'm going to talk a bit about the what happened with the Alabama church shooting. Apparently there was just a regular citizen who had actually ended up stopping the guy. And I'm pretty sure that's all. You know what? Sorry, I got more to talk about. So I'm going to talk about Tory's take as well in Toronto. So not, for the most part, it is in that order, but I had so much stuff to cover tonight, and I just wanted to get right to it. So the first thing I want to cover with you guys is if you haven't heard yet, there were a lot of shootings over the Father's Day weekend in Toronto. So I'm just going to play a little clip from that from Global News, and you can just take a listen.
First, what I would say is Toronto is a very safe city.
But for many, their confidence shaken after a violent weekend. Shootings on Friday and on Saturday, but Sunday proving to be particularly dangerous with 4 shootings in just 6 hours. The first happening just before 3 p.m. near Humber and Alliance Avenue. 2 teenage boys were injured by the gunfire.
The reports were multiple gunshots were heard in the area, upwards to 15 shots.
And less than 2 hours later, at around 4:17 p.m., another shooting near Allen Road and Eglinton Avenue.
So again, just broad daylight that these shootings are happening.
10 minutes after that, at Caledonia Road and Lawrence Avenue West, police were called to the scene for a third shooting.
About 6 pops I heard really loud.
24-year-old Jerron Williams was killed. And then, at around 8 p.m. near Highway 401 and McCowan Road,
we did locate 4 victims who had been shot. There are 3 males and 1 female.
Police say it happened at an unsanctioned car meetup. Global News obtained video of the moments gunshots rang out at the car meeting.
All of these investigations are very active and ongoing as we speak.
On Monday afternoon, Toronto police confirming 2 of the shooting incidents were in fact connected. On Monday,
no kidding. I think we all could have figured that one out as well.
Mayor John Tory calling the gun violence unacceptable in a series of tweets. He says the fact there were several shootings in our city this weekend, including one where 2 young boys were victims, is extremely disturbing. Now, we did reach out to Mayor John Tory to ask if we could speak with him on camera. Instead, we were directed to his statement. I should mention in that statement, he did mention that he will be working with Toronto Police and the Guns and Gangs Task Force to stop gun violence in the city. He says he's also looking to work with those organizations to stop the flow of illegal guns, into Canada.
Isn't that funny, though? John Tory's powerful statement. The only word I think that guy knows how to use is the word unacceptable whenever something violent happens in Toronto. So again, if you have any friends who are anti-gunners, play this clip for them, because even they're saying they're going to use the anti-gun and gang task force there. Okay, this next clip is the Toronto Sun's kind of take on the issue here, and just take a listen.
Weekend like we had on Father's Day weekend, you start to hear once again the similarities and the comparisons to Chicago. And of course, Toronto is not Chicago, but it's sure giving the old college try to become it. And
if your city is being compared to Chicago, that is not a good sign.
And as you can hear from Superintendent Steve Watts at Toronto Police, this was one rough weekend.
Friday, June 17th at 10:40 Saturday, June 18th at 3:23 a.m. Sunday, June 19th at 2:40 p.m. 4:17 p.m. 4:24 p.m. 8:05 p.m.
When you have 6 shootings, 11 people hit, 2 dead, and 2 of the wounded were teenagers, 14 and 15 years old, and you also have a homicide victim like here in the West End on Lotherton Pathway, you've got to start to not only take out a calculator to add them all up, but look in the mirror as a city and say, what's going on?
So, in your opinion, guys, why is this happening? Just feel free to put it in the comments below. My opinion, we clearly don't have strong enough laws as far as guns and gangs are concerned. A lot of these guys get out on bail. Look what happened to Tamara Litch. I think I already mentioned this, but how long did they keep her without... they kept her in prison for quite a while without being able to get on bail. And these guys get out in like a weekend a lot of the time too.
I tell you, when you talk to neighbors, they're pretty nervous.
The young people are dying, and it's so sad. It's very scary because I never heard shots in my life.
So a lot of people are asking, just what do you do about it? Do you take the guns off the street? How do you do that? Superintendent Watts is a realist on where these guns are coming from, and he addressed that in his news conference.
A buyback program is counterintuitive to American guns. No one's going to submit an American crime gun for a buyback program. You're using that for your own illicit purposes.
So we're out here.
And that's the problem. A lot of these people don't realize these buyback programs are so useless, and they're not going to do anything to prevent crime.
Here at another shooting scene where this time a young man in his 20s died. And of course there's many other incidences, including people that were at a car rally that wasn't supposed to happen. And there was 4 people shot there. And as Steve Watts says, 11 in total. We've seen weekends like this before.
And I just want to stop it there, and not to perpetuate a stereotype or anything, but if you watch Fast and the Furious and stuff like that, and I've seen these car rallies in person before, they're not exactly, I wouldn't want my son or daughter going to them, put it to you that way.
And you can gloss it over and pretend that it's safer than Chicago, and I know that people will do that. But we shouldn't do that. We should look at ourselves and say, what is the problem? Whatever it is, whatever style, whatever ideology, whatever amount of law enforcement you need, do it. Because young people are dying. And that's unacceptable. We're a year out from when that young person was shot walking back with his mom from the grocery store. In all of these incidences, that can happen. A bullet can stray and hit an innocent person that has nothing to do with it. In this case, innocent people that were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, if you will. There's no wrong place and wrong time when you're in the city of Toronto. You should be able to go anywhere safely. This is not Chicago. This is not anywhere else. And we don't want it to become that. With Ernest Rose.
Well, it looks like it's going to become Chicago eventually if this stuff keeps up, right? And that's the problem with a liberal government is... I remember when I used to listen to like 640 news on the way to work a lot of the time, and I would just find myself getting so angry just listening to all these crimes that were happening, and then these guys just getting out and getting no slap on the wrist. And then you have a lot of lefty-leaning people who are just like, well, we need more social programs. And I used to work for a social program as well, and they acted like these social programs are going to be the magic cure-all and it's just going to eliminate all crime. Fact of the matter is, yeah, social programs have their place, but the bottom line is there are bad, evil people out there who don't care about what happens to you or your family, and therefore they have to be dealt with. And when we keep seeing like minimum mandatory sentences being reduced, that's a huge issue here. And I know it's happening in the States as well, but it's definitely happening, I feel like, a lot more in Canada as well. This next video I want to share with you guys is, I don't know if you heard about this. This was a woman set on fire at Kipling subway station. And yes, I'm not kidding. Somebody actually lit her on fire. I don't know what the hell's going on. And again, maybe it's just because I'm getting all this stuff in my feed now. But this is not the Canada that I grew up in. And again, you can argue that the media covers it more, which is, I'm probably sure, a little bit true. But I also feel like people are not punished enough. So listen to this one.
Disturbing incident we're learning about that happened this afternoon. The woman was seriously burned in what police are calling a random assault. Now, this is a live look tonight at the scene. This all happened at a bus shelter near Kipling and Dundas. Toronto police say a man allegedly poured a liquid substance on the woman and ignited it. The woman was critically injured, and paramedics say she was taken to a burn center in life-threatening condition. The man has been arrested.
So I'm guessing this guy's going to get off for a temporary insanity or something like that. But this just shows you the importance, too, of just being aware of your surroundings, too. And especially if any of you have tried IPSC and stuff like that or getting your black badge, you always got to know what's around you. Never assume that you're safe. And obviously you don't want to live in a state of perpetual fear, but you do want to be in a state of preparation, right? And a part of my problem is too, I get a little crazy like that sometimes. Like I always think like, well, what would happen if this person approached me in that way? But at least then you're ready for it, right? And obviously this woman was just innocent bystander, very trusting, and then this person took advantage of that and is obviously a psychotic person. And there's people like that out there. So I think I'm sure as the gun community, we know that. So I feel like I'm preaching to the choir a lot of the time here, but let's just continue with this.
Now, at this point, officials with the TTC, they say they are supporting Toronto police in their investigation. If you recall, however, it was just a couple of months ago that we saw incidents of random violence on the TTC. There was one situation when a woman was pushed onto subway tracks. We spoke with TTC.
So I'm just going to pause it there. So it's just showing a video right now of literally, if you go take the subway in Toronto, there's a thick yellow line that you have to stand behind. So this woman was just minding her own business, and this other woman just approaches her, and she literally just pushed her off of the platform. So again, that's what I think it is super important for us to be aware of what's happening around us and be aware of your surroundings.
CEO Rick Leary about today's incident, and he says he's focused on ensuring riders feel safe.
We have hired additional special constables at the TTC, and we have another class that'll be coming out in just a couple of weeks, so there'll be more. And we strategically deploy them around the system where we know incidents happen and where we know that we need to watch. On the subway platforms, we have designated waiting areas where an individual can stand and see that they are being monitored through a camera system, but they also have an emergency button or information button that they could push if they ever needed help.
Okay, so I don't know about you guys, but I prefer to trust my own judgment. I'm not going to rely on a camera system to take care of me. If a person's gonna try to hurt somebody or kill somebody, they're not going to care about the camera. So again, you got to just watch out for yourself in these instances here.
Now, the investigation is ongoing. At this point, we have no details on who the suspect is or what sort of charges he will face. And we are continuing to monitor this story. We're expecting to hear from Toronto Police in just a little while. Of course, we'll have more on Global News at 11 and online at globalnews.ca.
Okay, I'll just stop it there for a second. All right, next thing I want to talk about. This is an article that came from Hamilton Police. Hamilton Police seek assistance locating shooting. Hamilton Police are asking for public assistance in locating the suspect wanted in a shooting earlier last week. On Sunday, June 12th, 2022, at approximately 4:30 p.m., here's another broad daylight shooting. Hamilton Police responded to a shooting in the area of Hess Street North and Market Street in Hamilton. 2 males sustained non-life-threatening gunshot wounds and several vehicles were damaged. With the assistance of the public, Hamilton Police have now positively identified the shooter as 21-year-old Alexander Law of Hamilton. A warrant has been obtained for his arrest. Law is described as male, Asian, 5'9", 154 pounds with long black hair. He should be considered armed and dangerous at this time. His whereabouts are unknown. If seen, Hamilton Police are appealing to the public not to approach Law and call 911. Again, this is just crazy. So as you know, with Bill C-21, as gun owners are looking to be vilified here. You hear of these incidences in the news. What is the Liberal government doing to keep these people off the streets? Because these guys don't care about legal guns. Obviously, they don't have their RPALs and stuff like that. Obviously, they're gaining these guns coming through the States or whoever. So I just wanted to share that example with you. Okay, and this is the last video where I'm actually talking about direct crime here. This one happens. This happened over the weekend in Washington. This one comes from Fox News, and just listen to this one.
News alert, and a crowd out to celebrate Juneteenth yesterday forced to run for cover in our nation's capital.
You believe this? The shooting claiming the life of a 15-year-old boy and leaving a D.C. police officer and 2 others wounded.
Griff Jenkins is live in Washington to tell us more about this developing story. That 15-year-old boy, I know you told us in the first hour, as he was dying, was calling out for his mother.
So tragic. Ainsley, Brian, and Steve, good morning. Now, this shooting took place during an unpermitted Juneteenth event yesterday here in Washington, D.C. One eyewitness says he was right.
And if I'm correct, Washington, D.C. is one of those states that has a super high amount of gun control.
Next to the police officer who was shot, and Ainsley, he also says he witnessed some of that 15-year-old boy's final moments. Watch.
I was sitting next to a cop. Next thing you know, shots rang out. He was shot in the leg, and he kept moving. He went to the fire. He did not run away.
The 15-year-old child.
Yeah, he was screaming out for his mom. And it's hurtful to hear that, man. And no one was able to help him. To see him go, it's like, it bothers me.
At least 3 people, including the police officer, were injured in the chaos. No arrests have been made in connection with the shooting yet. And we're learning that more than 100 metro...
And it's just showing a picture of the area right now, guys, and it's just like littered with trash everywhere.
Police officers were on the scene during the event dubbed Mochella. It is billed as an advocacy festival amplifying the culture of Washington, D.C. MPD Chief Conti says a gun was recovered and 2 fights were broken up even before the shots rang out.
MPD members began to shut the event down because it appeared that the event was unsafe. There were several people who were injured as a result of their leg or ankles being trampled as they tried to run from the area. When you have large gatherings in a dense area, all it takes is one person introducing a gun to the situation that makes it deadly.
This as violent crime is up 12%. You see here in the district, homicides up 13% and robbery surging 33%. And it's not just in D.C. and Harlem. One shot and killed with 8 others injured. And in Chicago, 4 people were killed, 32 injured in weekend violence. Brian?
Chicago, 4 dead and 32 injured. Now that is crazy.
And Ainsley and Steve?
Hey, Griff, just a moment of clarification. I remember on Friday they were closing portions of the National Mall. I think Pharrell was having a big music concert or something like that. This is different than that. These are 2 separate events, right?
That's right. This was not the big event that was permitted and planned for. This was an unpermitted event that turned into an out-of-control party there in the popular 14th and U area where Steve, a lot of restaurants, a lot of people gathered there, and the officials, Chief Conti and others, saying that they simply had a situation that got out of control with multiple fights breaking out, and then, of course, shots ringing out. They tried to crack it down. Unfortunately, they didn't do it soon enough, it appears.
I don't know about you guys, but I have no desire to go to Washington, D.C. at all. I'd love to go see the buildings, like the Capitol and stuff like that. But you know what? No, I'm good. I'm good here in Canada. Okay, the next one. This is just an article that I wanted to read for you, actually. And again, I feel like I am preaching to the choir, but I do feel this stuff is important for you guys to know too, to keep, just to be in the loop. And that way, if you ever get into an argument with these anti-gunners that say, oh, we got to get rid of all guns, it's like, well, no, you're not doing anything by getting rid of these guns from law-abiding citizens. So this one took place in Kingston. So the article reads, now there's a picture of a sawed-off shotgun. There's a billy bat. There's some shotgun ammo, some brass knuckles here. And the title reads, Kingston police seize drugs, weapons during arrest. Kingston police have seized a quantity of drugs as well as several weapons following an arrest. The suspect is now facing 14 related criminal charges. Quote, on June 16th, 2022, an individual riding a bicycle attempted to evade 2 patrol officers after committing a traffic infraction in the area of Wilson Street and Drennan Street, Kingston police said in a press release. According to police, officers were able to locate the individual outside of an address on Wilson Street. Quote, upon approaching the individual, one of the officers observed a can of bear spray in the individual's waistband, the press release said. The individual, who was already known to the officers, there's a shocker, already known to the officers, was subsequently arrested for possession of a weapon and possession of a weapon while prohibited. Police said that a further search revealed that the individual was also in possession of a folding knife, brass knuckles, a sawed-off 12-gauge shotgun, and a quantity of crystal methamphetamine, along with various drug paraphernalia. So once again, if your friends are super anti-gun, just share this with them, or I'll put the article in the description so you can check it out for yourself. The 26-year-old individual has been charged with the following offenses: unlicensed person possess prohibited restricted weapon, unlicensed person possess prohibited ammunition, store firearm carelessly, store ammunition carelessly, possession of weapons dangerous, carry concealed weapon, possession of restricted prohibited firearm without holding a license and registration certificate. Oh my God, you mean he's not a licensed gun holder? How surprised are we? Possession of restricted prohibited device knowing no authority, possession of prohibited ammunition knowing no authority. I don't really know what that means, but these are all separate charges here. Possession of a firearm while prohibited, possession of ammunition while prohibited, possession of a weapon while prohibited. I'm assuming that means he was arrested before. Possession for the purpose of trafficking and breach of probation. So there you go. So this guy was arrested and put back on the street, and once again he's arrested again with all of this stuff on him. So obviously we know where the problem comes from as far as these the gun problem in Canada, and let's be honest, in the US is concerned as well. Now mass shootings are obviously is going to be a little bit different than the constant gun crime going on. That's going to be more of the disturbed individual type thing. But again, the majority of the time, this is guns and gangs and drug dealing and stuff like that. Okay, the next thing I wanted to share with you is this is an interview between Conservative MPs Jamie Schmale and I forgot her name, Rachel Danco, I believe her name is. I can't remember the name of the other guy. I had it written down, but I lost the sheet in front of me here. So just take a listen. The other guy, though, he was in that documentary that I shared with you guys with Marco Mendicino, speaking with a Conservative MP, and they were talking to communities in the area about how they could reduce the gun violence. Anyway, here we go.
Announcement by Justin Trudeau to go after handguns, but not handguns in the hands of criminals. Handguns that are used by responsible, law-abiding firearms owners.
And I think, Canadians overall, Jamie, I think are learning or hearing more and more about handgun violence in our major cities.
So this is Raquel Danco, or I'm pretty sure it's Danco, Raquel Danco, and she's an MP, a Conservative MP.
Growing increasingly concerned about this, as are Conservatives across the country. So the Liberals had an opportunity to announce something that would make a meaningful impact on gun violence across Canada, and they failed to do so. Instead of targeting the issue, which we well know is gun smuggling from the United States, police confirm this time and time again. Toronto police, for example, have confirmed that at least 85% of handguns used in crime in Toronto are illegally smuggled in from the United States. And we know that the vast majority of gun crime in Canada is committed by those who are not legally allowed to own handguns or any kind of firearm and don't legally possess them. So again, we saw an announcement from the Liberals that was not targeting that problem really at all. And that's what's very frustrating for Canadians that want to see meaningful action on gun violence.
Yeah, absolutely. So this new ban, if it passes, stops the importation, the sale, the transfer of firearms. And as we were speaking off air, when the last firearms owner dies with a handgun, there should be no legal firearms in Canada.
Handgun firearms. Yeah.
Handguns, yes, sorry.
Yeah. So I think, as Raquel has said, the rhetoric behind what the Liberals have been...
Now, I'm just going to stop it there for a second. Do you guys think that they're going to stop at handguns with this, or do you think this will eventually turn into long guns and stuff like that? I mean, personally, I think if this ban does go through, I feel like eventually they will try to take away long guns. I think it will take a long time, but then again, who knows? The way this government is working, they just try to push everything they can as quickly as possible. But you got to remember, as far as government works as well, they try to do these things in very, very small steps much of the time, because if they do too much at once, then you'll have a lot of people speaking out, and it's easier to just do things in small increments, and then the general public just doesn't notice or doesn't care, as opposed to saying we're going to ban all weapons whatsoever. So what do you guys think? Mention it in the comments. Do you think they're going to eventually go to long guns? Do you think they're eventually going to try to ban ammunition? I know for myself, when I first heard of the handgun ban, I went and bought some more 9mm ammo just to have, just to bring to the range, because who knew? I assumed everybody was going to go out and buy some ammo as well. And they haven't announced that yet, but I wouldn't put anything past these guys.
Been trying to do with gun violence in our communities over the last 7 years, and where they've missed the mark so terribly. It seems like they are catering with language to people who aren't aware of the very strict laws we already have in this country. And as you asked in the first question, the targeting of C-21, of the handgun ban, and anything to do with firearms has been focused solely on Canadians, law-abiding gun owners.
And I posted this in a lot of the gun forums too, and a lot of people know the truth, right? It's much easier for the government to come after us, because they know in general a lot of times we'll just sit there and take it, right? It's a lot harder to stop a criminal than it is to stop a law-abiding citizen like us.
Who have never been a problem in this country with creating violence, and they have 3 times less likelihood of committing an offense as a firearms owner than the average citizen in Canada. And so, we have a misguided approach by this guy.
So the guy speaking right now, his name is Glen Motz, and he was the guy in that documentary that I mentioned with Mendocino in it.
Government that is focused on the easy. It's
oh, sorry, and he's also an MP, you guys.
Lazy government legislation, when you can go after the low-hanging fruit, if you will, and miss the exact mark of where we're after. The criminals don't follow the rules already. They don't follow the law already. And so by targeting people, who are law-abiding, you have missed the mark. And the sad thing about it is we all want improved public safety. We don't want people shooting up our streets and having lives lost. But this isn't going to help.
So this is why I wish we did have a Second Amendment in Canada. Now, I know a lot of Canadians disagree with me on that, but I was watching Colion Noir, and he made a great point. He was saying, I'll play the clip for you guys after, but he was talking about the way Trudeau, he basically speaks down to us a lot of the time. Don't get me wrong, the Democrats do that too in the States, but he made a good point saying that in the States, a lot of the lawmakers have to kind of tiptoe around people because of the Second Amendment, right? Here, without that type of guarantee of us being able to own a firearm, they don't care what we think. I mean, we can protest, we can do all kinds of stuff, but look what happened with the trucker protest, right? Now, they were there for a good amount of days, but eventually they just said, okay, you're getting out, and they implemented the Emergencies Act, and away you went, right? That's definitely going to be a lot more difficult to do in the States with their Second Amendment. Let's just keep listening here.
But this isn't going to do anything for it. And that's the sad reality.
So we know this as conservatives, right? We know that the issue is smuggling at the border. We know that gangs are causing a lot of this increased violence. But if I lived in the city, Raquel, you're not too far from Winnipeg, if I'm in Vancouver, Edmonton, Toronto, wherever where these shootings are happening, I just want these shootings to end. I think, is that something we have to really educate about to let people know that it's basically a false sense of security that the government is giving them right now?
Certainly, and I think we've been effectively communicating that in the media opportunities we've been provided in the last week since the Bill C-21 announcement. I did want to build on something Glenn had said. Those who have an RPAL, which is what you need to own a handgun in this country, and other various restricted firearms, are the most vetted people in Canada. They are thoroughly background checked. So I think that point really needs to be made very, very clear. But to your point, I know in Winnipeg we're seeing rising violence generally and rising violence with firearms or guns. And so I toured the Winnipeg Police Headquarters facilities to find out more about this. They had recently done a $500,000 drug bust, a big table full of all the drugs and all the cash, and then a very long table of the firearms they apprehended in this bust. And they're doing these busts almost monthly. It's that bad.
Just to touch on what she's talking about, wherever you guys live, whether you're in Ontario, BC, Saskatchewan, Alberta, wherever, I encourage you to, on your social media, follow the local police station in your area or the provincial police. And you will, like in Ontario, it's the OPP. I don't know what it would be called elsewhere, but make sure you follow those pages, because a lot of times they will show exactly who they arrested. They'll put pictures of the guns that have been seized and all that kind of stuff. And 95% of the time when I get these updates on my Facebook or wherever, it's always illegal guns. It's always there's always a ton of cash involved. There's always a ton of drugs involved. I have yet to see, at least from what I've noticed, I have yet to see a person who legally got their guns. I think there was one guy in Canada recently, by recently I mean like 4 months ago, who apparently had a bunch of long guns and he was thinking about using them. But that was the only instance I saw. Everybody else, it was all illegal handguns. So follow your local police stations just so you can kind of stay in the loop with that. And again, if you ever get into an argument with an anti-gunner, you can always say, well, here, look at this. And I do it sometimes to my buddies too. I'll send them these, I'll just share with them the articles from the police that I find. I'm like, well, here's another illegal gun. Here's another illegal gun. Here's another illegal gun, right? Then eventually they start to get it. And my wife used to be, she wasn't like super anti-gun or anything, but over the last 2 years with all the COVID nonsense that happened, I really educated her a lot. And I know it's like, I don't know if you guys are the only ones, but I feel like my wife doesn't listen to me about like 80% of the time. But the message did seem to get through, because she's actually like very pro-gun now. And she totally supports what I do with the channel and stuff like that. But even if you think you're not making a difference as far as educating the public, you're going to affect somebody, and you're planting those seeds to encourage somebody to actually look into these issues for themselves instead of just listening to whatever the mainstream news tells them.
And every single one of those handguns were already illegal, not even just prohibited or restricted, but were already illegal models of handguns in Canada. And all of them were smuggled in from the United States. They anticipate some by rail, some by vehicle, and in other parts of the country might be from marine ports of entry. So the police were explaining to me the severity of this and the growing problem. So we need more resources for our hardworking police who put their lives on the line to defend Canadians against gang violence and gun violence. And certainly, obviously, more resources invested in our border security.
Okay.
Major announcement by Justin.
Sorry, I just went back. I'm going to stop it there. So that was the end of that. And again, I remember years ago, this was probably like 2005 or whatever. Again, I had actually stopped listening to the news for a long, long time, because it just felt like I listened to a lot of talk radio, like Talk 640. And I would just... every day you'd hear about a gang shooting or whatever, and you'd get so angry because like nothing's happening with them putting these guys away. And I remember getting into an argument with a coworker, and he was basically trying to tell me that more police doesn't do anything. He's like, oh, it's proven more police don't do anything. And I was like, where's your evidence of that? How do you figure that more police do not do anything? If you've got a bunch of gangbangers and you've got 20 cops as opposed to 100 cops, who are they going to be more intimidated by? Now, some of these guys obviously don't care what happens to them, but who's got the better chance of winning that? So I think it's just these people have been trained by media just to believe that, oh, social programs are the only answer possible. Yeah, you're right, because, if I can make minimum wage working at the Denny's through my local social program, or if I can be a drug dealer making, thousands of dollars, easy money, what are you going to do, especially if you grew up in that, right? Okay. Want to touch a bit on the airsoft now, how Bill C-21 is going to affect it. So this is from Parliament. A NDP rep Gord Johns asking the Liberals, how is this going to affect airsoft, and why do the people who participate in airsoft feel like they're being targeted? And so again, if you don't think the NDP is totally behind this as well, remember they've got the coalition going, right? So pretty much the NDP has agreed to back the Liberals for the next 3 years. So unless something like really drastic happens, we're kind of stuck with that. But so listen to what this guy has to say. Oh, sorry, the sound is off. Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go.
The NDP supports the goal of getting military-style assault weapons off the street with a mandatory buyback of prohibited firearms. And we also welcome the announcement that the government is getting serious about cracking down on gun crime. However, Madam Speaker, we've received letters and calls from hundreds of concerned airsoft owners and businesses who simply just don't understand why there is to be a prohibition on importation, exportation, and sale of airsoft guns under this legislation. When preparing the bill, maybe my colleague can share who the government consulted with from the airsoft industry who are directly impacted by this bill, and if they're going to consult with the airsoft industry. Thank you.
Well, Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I would invite the honourable member to speak to the police service in his riding. When police are responding to a call, they have only seconds to be able to know whether they're dealing with a real gun or whether it's an airsoft rifle.
Okay, so does that justify getting rid of airsoft rifles because somebody didn't have brain enough to not bring a airsoft rifle that looks very similar to a real gun? Now, obviously, we kind of know what we're doing, so we would be able to tell the difference most of the time as licensed gun owners. But guess what? A lot of the cops, they're reacting very fast to these situations, and so you're going to punish basically all airsoft owners for the stupid decisions made by some people who just carry it out in the open. Let's just keep listening here.
And unfortunately, the rifles that are used at airsoft ranges look so much like the real thing. The police don't have the opportunity to check to see, and people have lost their lives. Police are put in a very difficult position. So look forward to hearing from the airsoft industry. I'm sure that they'll be speaking to us at committee when we study the bill. But I would invite the honourable member to speak to the police in his area about the challenges that they have.
A quick question.
So I'm just going to mute it there. And that's a really ridiculous comment that she just made, too, because I don't know if you guys heard about this the other day. Apparently, there was a guy in, I think, I could be wrong, I think it was Australia or somewhere, where he, you can make a 3D printed gun. So he had made this, I don't know if it was an automatic or not, but the cop, I think I'm pretty sure it was Australia. The cops had arrested him because he had made a 3D printed, you know how I'm gonna put air quotes assault rifle, and I think he got arrested. I'll have to double check on that. But again, and I think it was like red, yellow, and blue or something, and it kind of looked very like Lego-ish. So her little argument there that the airsoft looked too much like the real weapons. If you did have a 3D printed type gun, you can't really look at just because they look like a real weapon. But I don't know. In my opinion, I'm all about individual responsibility. So again, I would never bring a gun out live, so that for people to see me with. And as Canadians, we have to make sure it's like if you're transporting your long rifle or whatever. It says right in the Canadian firearms book that you have to like cover it up so that people don't see it, right? I don't know, man. I feel like this government is just such a nanny state. I was listening to getting off topic a bit, but I was listening to the radio today, and they were talking about how all single-use plastics are almost finished now. So you're not even going to be able to get a plastic bag. And you see it at Walmart and stuff too now, right? Like they don't have plastic bags anymore. And it's just like, my God, like how much are they going to try to control of our lives, right? And that's why I'm basically very conservative now. Okay, next thing I wanted to talk about was I mentioned the Alabama church shooting last week a little bit. More details have started to come out now. So this is just another article I came across from the Daily Wire. And sorry guys if my reading's not as exciting as the videos, but it is still pretty good information in my opinion anyway. So the title of this article is Hero Churchgoer Subdued Active Shooter, Police Say. So this is actually a good story coming out of something for a change. Good story in bad circumstances. Police announced on Friday that a, quote, hero churchgoer subdued an active shooter who killed 2 people and injured another at an Alabama church on Thursday night. The lone suspect, who was a quote occasional attendee of the church, and a 71-year-old white male attended a dinner at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church on Thursday night, Vestavia Hills Police Department Captain Shane Ware stated during a press conference on Friday morning. The suspect began shooting at some point with a handgun, striking 3 victims until he was stopped by a churchgoer. Another attendee at the event subdued the suspect and held him down until law enforcement arrived, Ware reported. Ware referred to the person who subdued the suspect as a, quote, hero, noting that the act of heroism was extremely critical in saving lives. Governor Kay Ivey, who's a Republican from the R from Alabama, it's either representative, I'm assuming he's Republican, I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, released a statement after the deadly shooting saying, "This should never happen," the Daily Wire reported. As we are learning about the shocking and tragic loss of life at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Vestavia, we want to offer our prayers for the victim's family, the injured, and the entire church community, Ivey said. "I'm glad to hear the shooter is in custody. This should never happen in a church, in a store, in the city, or anywhere. We continue to closely monitor the situation." When a reporter asked Ware if police knew what motivated the suspect, Ware said that, quote, "it is still being looked into by too many agencies." The victims were identified by Ware as Walter Rainey, an 84-year-old male, Sarah Yeager, a 75-year-old female, and an unnamed 84-year-old female. Rainey was deceased at the scene of the event, and Yeager passed away at UAB Hospital. The unnamed female is being treated at a local hospital currently. All of the victims were white. I don't know why that's relevant, but whatever. The suspect is currently in custody at the Vestavia Hills Police Department and will remain there while warrants for capital murder are issued by the Jefferson County District Attorney's Office later on Friday. Quote, "There is no threat to the community," Ware stated during the press conference, adding that numerous agencies and detectives are actively investigating the case and still remain on scene at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. This shooting comes amid a number of other shootings that received national attention and led to calls for gun reform. Notably in May, an 18-year-old gunman killed 10 people and wounded 3 in a Buffalo grocery store, allegedly targeting the establishment because of racial hatred and extremist ideology. And another 18-year-old killed 21 people and wounded 17 at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. After these shootings, President Joe Biden called for clamping down on Americans' Second Amendment rights during a speech. "We need to, quote, we need to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines," Biden said. "And if we can't ban assault weapons, then we should raise the age to purchase them from 18 to 21, strengthen the background checks." And then the article ends there. So I just thought it was a good story about somebody actually taking action to prevent something, or not to prevent it, sorry, to react to the situation. And this hero saved lives. Didn't mention his name or anything, but you know what? If I was him, I probably wouldn't want my name printed either. And God knows what kind of crazies are going to come out with that if he released his name. Interesting thing in relation to that, they were saying with the Uvalde, Texas shooter, apparently the cops had an opportunity to kill the guy before he had killed many of the children, and the cops had decided not to fire because they were worried about hitting the kids in the back. You got to feel for the cops these days because the media is the big problem here too. Because of the media, they're being blamed for everything left and right, and a lot of times they're going to second guess themselves, right? So you got to feel for them there. But more info is coming out about that with the Texas, the Uvalde, the school shooting there. Okay, before I move on to the self-defense debate here, I just want to, there's a quick interview with a CTV guy with Jagmeet Singh, asking him about if he felt he was misled about the Emergencies Act. This is just a quick one, guys. Take a listen.
And that led you to support the use of the Emergencies Act, suggesting that that was what was required.
At the time, we know that once it was invoked, the crisis was dealt with. As soon as it was invoked, the occupation of Ottawa was ended, the ongoing threats to border closures was ended, and we were able to provide security for Canadians. That to me is a sign that it worked. But
you don't feel misled. You don't feel that the Liberals said, "Oh, we were listening to police, we got advice," and the police said, "Well, we didn't ask for it, in other words, they may not have needed it. You wanted it, so you don't feel like he misled, and you don't feel that you were misled.
Okay, so just to give you some context, in case you haven't been following the situation, Marco Mendicino, who's the public safety minister, had basically told government that the RCMP and the OPP and all these police organizations had asked the government to go ahead and invoke the Emergencies Act, right, which gives them reaching powers. It allowed them to freeze people's bank accounts and stuff like that. It was discovered later that Mendicino basically lied about that. And so that's what this reporter is asking Singh about. He's saying, do you feel misled? Because now they found out, after verifying with all the different police agencies, none of the police agencies had actually asked about the Emergencies Act. So let's hear his response here.
Our understanding was that the advice that we had received, that we were given when we were briefed, was that tow truck companies weren't willing to tow trucks away. They needed increased powers to make them, force them to tow trucks away. They needed increased power to go after the money, because the money was flowing in a significant way. We're talking millions of dollars to fund the occupation. So there was tools needed, and we were advised that these additional tools were needed. But that's the whole point of the review.
You misled.
Okay, so it's just repeating now. So there's his take. From this take, I just get that, like I said before, we are pretty much stuck with this government until 2025. Like I said, unless some major event happens, and I really don't see the NDP going against the Liberals, because they have not stood against them on anything. And you even heard the guy talking about the airsoft, how the Bill C-21 is going to affect the airsoft industry. But right away he's like, we do agree, the NDP does agree with getting rid of assault weapons and stuff like that. It really gives me a bad feeling, though, that this bill will pass. I wonder if that's going to happen in the next couple of days, or if they are going to actually wait till November. So that'll be interesting to watch. Okay, this next clip that I want to share with you guys. Now we're going to shift more to the United States. A lot of Canadians don't quite understand the Second Amendment. It was funny. I had a guy comment on saying I was totally wrong about the Second Amendment, and he said it was to oppose tyrannical governments. And I was like, dude, I literally said that in my video. But I guess understandably, people aren't going to listen to the whole thing, and are just going to make judgments, which is fine. So this is Chip Roy. He's a Republican in the House, speaking about the Second Amendment. And here we go. I'll just let you hear him out.
Is it to hunt? Sure. Self-defense? That's even more important. But the fact is, you read the founders, Federalist 46, James Madison, contrasts us with the tyrannical governments of Europe who are, quote, afraid to trust the people with arms. Joseph Story, in his commentaries on the Constitution in 1833, quote, the right of the citizens to keep and bear arms has justly been considered as the palladium of the liberties of a republic, since it offers a strong moral check against the usurpation and arbitrary power of rulers, and will generally, even if these are successful in the first instance, enable the people to resist and triumph over them. We have a Second Amendment because we understand in this country that there are some things, inalienable rights, that you cannot justly take away from a free and equal human being. Tyrants disarm the people they intend to oppress. Those are the facts. Jewish people in Germany were prohibited from owning arms. 13 million Jews were exterminated by the Nazis. The Soviets instituted gun control and millions were killed. 20 million dissidents were rounded up and exterminated. Mao disarmed the Chinese people. 20 million dissidents were exterminated. In Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge were able to take advantage of the fact that limited gun ownership to just hunters and killed 1.5 million to 3 million Cambodians. Turkey disarmed Armenians and 1.5 million Armenians were killed in the Armenian genocide. The South disarmed slaves and actively fought against their arming. And then in the 20th century, armed Black Army veterans, for example, in Louisiana, were able to defend against the KKK. Even fact-checking organization Snopes said, quote, we find it reasonable to conclude that gun confiscations facilitated by laws requiring the registration and licensing of firearms played a crucial role in the carrying out of 20th century genocides. This is not fiction. This is in our lifetime. This is in our grandparents' lifetime.
I got to stop it there for a second. So my grandfather was in Greece at the time, and he died many years ago. But he was telling me the story about when the Nazis had invaded Greece, and he came from a village, a small village. I'm not going to mention the name, but he actually remembers seeing them drop in with their parachutes too. So I never asked him if they were armed or not. I'm actually going to assume that they were not. Now I know there was a resistance in Greece. If you ever watch Captain Corelli's Mandolin, it'll explain that. And but anyway, it's again for a lot. I think a lot of people just take for granted that the freedoms that have been fought for and the freedoms that we have today, and people think, oh, that can never happen to us in our lifetime. But once again, look at all the COVID stuff, right? How many people look at the stuff that happened in Australia with the COVID stuff, where people were put into separate isolation. I'm going to call it a facility. But they actually had people in isolation huts and stuff like that, right? Houses, and they weren't allowed to leave because they were trying to get to zero COVID. So if you think this stuff can't happen, it can happen anytime. And remember, just because somebody doesn't think the way you do, it sounds like when you're watching an Austin Powers movie, you've got those Dr. Evil characters, or you got those World Economic Forum type guys, those Klaus Schwab type guys. And there are people out there that exist, it sounds ridiculous, but those people are out there, so you have to be aware of it. But he just made me think of my grandfather, and again, the Nazis just invading, and just imagine not being armed and just having your home taken, right? Anyway, let's continue with this. I was getting kind of off track there.
This is in our recent history. This is why the Second Amendment matters. It's not trivial. It's not something you just brush aside. This is a foundation of liberty. It's who we are. But in order to sell a lie to the American people, that the government will protect them from all manners of evil, while defunding the police, leaving our borders wide open, I'm glad my colleagues can suddenly find Uvalde on a map.
Yeah, great point about suddenly finding Uvalde on a map too, right? Because many people, I didn't know where that was. And then when you heard Matthew McConaughey's from Uvalde, but did any of you guys know? Because I didn't, I'll be honest about that. But again, there's that whole defund the police movement. If you remember 2 years ago, the Democrats were saying we want to defund the police. And I remember watching this and I'm like, are these people crazy? What do you mean defund the police? And remember all the stuff that happened in Minnesota too. Remember I think Antifa was involved as well, but they were going to the police precinct and burning it down. They were burning down businesses and stuff like that. And I just remember how insane it was. And it's like how do you justify defunding your police, right? Again, this is a huge emotional reaction from that side, right? And that side just tends to want to just burn everything down and start from scratch. It's like, well, no, you need to take what works, and if you have to change something, fine. But I love what this guy is saying about the Second Amendment, because this really is the whole point of it here.
While allowing dangerous cartels operating hundreds of miles into Texas, allowing fentanyl to pour into our communities and kill tens of thousands of children. The very children my colleagues say they wish to protect. In order to do this, Democrats in this body are willing to take away a citizen's God-given right, yes, God-given right that was mocked earlier, to protect himself or herself or her family or his family from harm. The very harm they foster by appeasing lawlessness. And importantly, from the very tyranny being applied to them to deny that right. That is what is at stake. This bill, and it gets brushed aside, raised the age limit. Well, there are constitutional questions to that in the Fourth Circuit, Ninth Circuit, and other circuits. The second title on straw purchases, the very straw purchases that Democrat DAs don't even want to really prosecute, would prohibit a law-abiding citizen from giving a gun to a friend as a gift. Safe storage would make it unlawful for me to have the 22 and the 20 gauge propped up by my door right now in Texas to kill coyotes and snakes. It would make it unlawful.
Good point about the coyotes and snakes, though, too, right? Because I don't know if you guys watch Yellowstone or not, too, but with Kevin Costner there. stuff that people that live in the cities don't really think about, right? I know a few people who live in rural areas, right? And they're constantly like, they have dogs outside, they got to worry about coyotes, or even when your kid is outside, right? So these are all important things to think about. But if I find a lot of people who just live in the city, they don't. Again, a lot of people don't want to think of the big picture of a lot of these implications as well, right?
This will not do any good. It will harm Americans, and it undermines our foundational liberties that is crucial for a free state.
Okay, so he stops there. So what did you guys think of what he had to say? Now, again, I'm a big proponent of the Second Amendment. Like I said, I wish we did have it in Canada. I do, like, in my opinion, I do think we all should have the right to defend ourselves. It's amazing how many people I've met who just want to rely on the government for their protection. And again, not to say that the cops aren't doing a good job, but if somebody ever breaks into your house or something and you call the cops, they might not get there in time. You know what I mean? So really, it's up to you to protect yourself and your family. One thing, I do follow a lot of American politics as well, but one thing I do love is a quote from Ronald Reagan where he says he says the 9 most terrifying words are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help," right? Because that usually means a lot more problems than anything. And you can see that. Look at the bureaucracy happening in Canada right now. Look at the inflation rates that are happening, not just in Canada but in the USA too, right? It's the incompetence, and it almost feels like it's what's the word I'm looking for? Like an orchestrated incompetence. You know what I mean? Because it's either that or these guys just don't care about regular citizens. You know, when I remember when they shut down the pipeline. Again, I'm kind of getting off topic here, but I feel like it is kind of related a little bit because these are their ideologies. I remember when the minute Biden got into office, he shut down the Keystone pipeline. How many jobs did that affect, right? And they're doing it for clean energy. It's like, yeah, you don't care about the jobs you're affecting, though you don't care about the people who are going to be out of work now, right? So anyway, I'm getting off topic here. Let's go to the next thing. So the next thing, we're still kind of in the self-defense debate here. I came across this video with Joe Rogan talking to Colion Noir, and this is where this was right after Trudeau had mentioned that in Canada you don't have a right to self-defense. So just take a listen to this one.
I'll send it to you, Jamie, because it is fucking wild. He said you don't have the right in Canada to own a gun to protect your life. It is one of the most wild things I've ever seen anybody say, because first of all, I don't believe it's true. I don't believe he is correct in terms of what do they have up there? They don't have a constitution. It's not the same. But yeah, whatever it is.
Like, I mean, they're still part of England and all them over there. Well, they're under the rule of the Queen.
Well, we have the Charter of Rights, but really, has that really been respected over the last 2 years? But anyway, I digress.
Theoretically, technically speaking.
Fuck, someone sent it to me, and I don't know if I saved it because I was so disgusted. I think I might have, just fucking threw my hands up in the air. But there's a whole Twitter thread about it that someone had sent to me, and I can't find it at the moment. But essentially what he was saying was that is not what's in the whatever they have up there.
Yeah.
That it says you have the right to own a gun for hunting and for shooting sports. You do not have the right to own a gun for self-preservation and to preserve lives. But apparently that's not even true.
Even if it was true, you have to think about what type of leader you're under who can open his mouth and say something like that as his justification for doing what he's doing as far as gun control is concerned.
Well, it's the son of a guy who was a politician and a leader and a completely removed person.
Now, let's just keep in mind, these are two Americans talking, so they don't know the full details, right? Again, we don't have a Second Amendment here like they do in the States, right? So now, this is not legal advice at all, but we do have a right to self-defense within reasonable limits. So basically, as far as I understand, it's dependent on, if someone broke into my house and I defended myself, it's dependent on the judge and the situation you get. So it's basically case by case in Canada. And I believe you're allowed to use reasonable force. And again, this is not legal advice at all, but reasonable force, that could mean anything, right? You could get a judge on a bad day or a judge on a vengeful day. Who knows, right? So the laws here are definitely not as concrete as they are in the USA with regards to self-defense.
From terms of regular society and the problems that other people face.
Oh, you mean like Joe Biden?
Yeah. Same thing, basically.
They're the same people.
Both corrupt, both full of shit. It's such a crazy thing to say, that you can't have a gun to protect yourself. Like, it's just that you do not have the right to own a gun to preserve your life.
And we have a culture where the difference is guns can be used for hunting or for sport shooting in Canada, and there's lots of gun owners, and they're mostly respecting and law-abiding. But you can't use a gun for self-protection in Canada. That's not a right that you have in the Constitution or anywhere else. If you try and buy a gun and say it's for self-protection, no, you don't get that. You get it for hunting. You can get it for sport shooting. You can take it to the range, no problem, as long as you go through our rigorous background checks. But there's a difference around the culture. And one of the things that we're seeing with the debate in the States is you get more and more of the American style, right to carry, self-defense arguments filtering up through the usual more right-wing communications channel.
Oh God, and I can't stand how everything is right wing, and like right wing is considered so evil and all that. It's like, man, I can't believe it took me so long to like realize that the Liberals were like the worst government, and just the philosophy of it too, right? But I guess that's what happens when you're indoctrinated into it. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about, so this is another one with Colion Noir now. So this is just after he had heard about Trudeau's comments, and he makes some great points about the self-protection and like how these leaders kind of think of us, right? So here you go, take a listen.
Rogan podcast, and he brought this video to my attention.
And we have a culture where the difference is guns can be used for hunting or for sport shooting in Canada, and there's lots of gun owners, and they're mostly respecting and law-abiding. But you can't use a gun for self-protection in Canada. That's not a right that you have in the Constitution or anywhere else. If you try and buy a gun and say it's for self-protection, no, you don't get that. You get it for hunting. You can get it for sport shooting. You can take it to the range, no problem, as long as you go through our rigorous background checks. But there's a difference around the culture. And one of the things that we're seeing with the debate in the States is you get more and more of the American style, right to carry, self-defense arguments filtering up through the usual more right-wing communications channel.
If our politicians who are screaming we need gun control and saying, oh, I believe and agree with the Second Amendment, they truly, honestly did, they would be condemning the things that Trudeau is doing. Trudeau is unilaterally making decisions that fly in the face of the very underrooted concepts of the Second Amendment. Yet you never hear them say anything negative about it. You never say, you know what? We have a Second Amendment in this country, and therefore we think what's going on in Canada is just not right. Oh, sure, we'll send soldiers and militaries and send people all across the globe to establish democracy. But for some reason, the neighbor to the north, who is completely undermining one of the most basic, fundamental, natural rights in the world, nothing, silence. And that's because our politicians who are talking about all this gun control stuff, they agree with him. They do not believe in the Second Amendment. But I want you to pay attention to how he talks to the people in Canada. He doesn't communicate. He doesn't speak to the people in Canada. He talks at them. And the reason why he does that is because Canada, they don't have a Second Amendment. Our politicians have to talk around the issue.
He's got a great point here, too. And if you don't agree with that, just remember when the truckers first announced that they were going to Ottawa to protest. And remember, he had called them a small fringe minority. And pretty much everybody that I had spoken to had supported them. The only people that I knew who didn't support the trucker convoy were people who were so far left that you weren't going to convince them of anything. You could have showed them sealed documents that these lockdowns were a scam and all that kind of stuff, and they still wouldn't have cared. They still would refuse to believe that kind of stuff.
have to come up with nice, soft words. They can't just do things unilaterally. That's why they're so frustrated, because we do have a constitution. And that's because the way our government was structured. I think people forget how this actual country was established. People forget we fought another country for being tyrannical. That country was literally trying to take guns away from us, and we said no and fought back and then established our own country after the fact. And because we used firearms, our own firearms, to fight that country to get our independence, we codified the ability of the people to maintain those arms in the event that the government we establish now happens to become tyrannical. We can fight that government off too, because the whole concept of this country was predicated on the idea of freedom. We have a judicial branch, we have a legislative branch, and we have an executive branch of our government. All three of those branches do not have unilateral power to do anything they want. They all check each other. And guess what? We have three branches of government according to what's written in our Constitution. But in reality, we have four: the legislative, the judicial, the executive, and the people. And the people don't mean shit if they don't have the effective means to check the government. And that effective means is firearms. It's that simple. Firearms. Stop thinking we're too progressive for firearms. Stop thinking we're too advanced for firearms. That's not how this works. At the end of the day, all across the world, people are still killing people. People are still dying. So there is no such thing as progressing past.
And I got to stop it there. I like what he said about how, what we will send military to other countries to establish democracy and stuff like that. Yet we won't let our citizens defend themselves, which is very interesting, and I believe it's true. Also, look at what I find really weird, and again, this kind of fits with. I notice a lot of if you tend to sway left, you're very. With the Ukraine stuff, I don't know enough about what's going on with the Ukraine-Russia conflict, but again, the same people who are supporting arming the Ukrainian people are the same people who are against law-abiding citizens owning guns for self-defense, right? It makes no sense whatsoever. And I try to have debates with those people, but I think once they're at that point, they're too far gone, right? But anyway, follow this guy on YouTube. He's got a great channel. I think you might have to pay for his stuff. I'm not quite sure, but anyway, let's finish this episode here.
Mass violence. That is a airy-fairy nonsense utopic mindset that is permeating very large aspects of this country, and it's destroying the country. Because in your attempts to create a utopia, you are stripping the people who need protection the most from being able to protect themselves. And that does not create a utopia. It creates a society of victims. And you know who preys on victims? Criminals. And you know whose guns are not going to get taken away with gun control? Criminals. So miss me with that utopia idea of, oh, no violence. No, there will always be violence because there will always be criminals. So empower the people who are not criminals to deal with those criminals when they arise. Guns aren't political. That's why you should help.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there because then he just goes into an ad for like insurance or something like that. But anyway, he's really good to follow. Very pro Second Amendment, obviously. And it just makes sense. Now, if you're not pro Second Amendment, look into. I'm a huge history buff. I love history. I love studying World War II. The last 2 years really made me super interested in American history, especially I used to be like very anti-Trump in the beginning. And actually when Trump first won, I wasn't really following politics. But I remember at work, people were freaking out. Oh my God, Trump won. And I was like, yeah, so what? I go, he got the votes. And then people are like, oh my God, it's going to be the end of the world, blah, blah, blah. But did you notice that everything now that people were accusing Trump was going to happen is actually happening under Biden? So anyway, it really, all the COVID stuff made me jump into studying U.S. history and studying freedom. And again, I'm still shocked that like so many people were just so willing to just stay home and be told what to do. You know what I mean? But again, that's what happens when you have a mass media that just spews whatever they want the message to be type thing. And again, if you're not a critical thinker, or if and let's face it, some people just want to live their life. They want to go home. They want to have a beer at the end of the day and not worry about this stuff, right? Because this stuff it can be stressful. It can be annoying, and sometimes you can feel hopeless with this stuff, right? So I remember having a discussion with this guy I know. He's a cop, and once we both found out we were conservatives, it was like, are we best friends now? Yep. It was kind of like the Step Brothers scene. And I told him, I said, man, part of me, this was about a year and a half ago, and I said, man, part of me wishes I never found out, and just kind of, because ignorance, let's face it, ignorance is bliss, right? It's like that scene in The Matrix where, what's that guy, Cypher, and he's enjoying that steak, and that steak just looked so good. And he knew it was fake, but he's just like, ignorance is bliss. And it's so true, right? But then my cop friend was basically saying, he goes, you know what? He goes, nope. He goes, I'm glad I woke up to this stuff. He goes, because I kind of know what to look out for now and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point too. Anyway, I'm going to stop the episode there tonight, guys. I know it was a long one, hour and 10 minutes. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some value out of it. Please remember to like and subscribe and share with a friend if you think they might enjoy it as well. Really appreciate you guys. And Canadian Range Nut here. Hope you have a great night.